want to say good morning to everyone, and on behalf of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. My name is Tammy Dunn, and I'll be your moderator for this event. It's great to see so many people, and I see some are still joining us, which is great. Before we get started, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself and allow me to introduce our panel of experts, Michelle and Alana. There we go. Can see you, Michelle. And what about you, Alana? Oh, there we go. Hi, Alana. Okay, so I've been at just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been at the Real Estate Board now for more than 20 years. It's hard to believe. Before that, I was a realtor actually for 7 years in the Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows area. I practiced mostly residential real estate, although I did find myself getting pulled into dealing in the commercial real estate and found it very, very interesting. And with the help of a really great mentor, I was able to actually complete a few business deals as well as complete some commercial property deals. So, but for the past 15 years of being at the board, my title has been commercial coordinator. Our focus at the Real Estate Board is to create, offer, and maintain quality business tools and services related to commercial real estate. These services include business tools like commercial broadcast email service, which some of you may use, commercial Paragon, obviously, which is our commercial MLS, helping with Commercial Edge, which is a commercial sales comparables website and a very valuable tool for doing any kind of land deals, and of course, events like we're having today. I've had the pleasure over the years of working with a lot of really great commercial realtors, and today obviously is no exception. So now let me introduce our panelists. So first we have Michelle Yu, and I am sure a lot of people know who Michelle is. Over the last 27 years, she has a load of commercial real estate experience and is one of the leading pioneers in Vancouver land assemblies. To ensure her practice remains relevant and current in today's market and among the best, and to be the best in the field, Michelle is serious about her responsibility to keep on top of the real estate market, the conditions, and the activity that's happening in her area. She is a great believer in continued learning and always strives to educate herself on an ongoing basis. Welcome, Michelle. You can unmute too.
Thank you, Tammy. Hi, everyone.
Next, we have Alana Bertini. Alana has been an associate broker and a realtor since 1988, with a focus in commercial real estate. And more importantly, she's been involved in many land deals and strata windups. Some of her accomplishments are, and this one I know personally because I was involved in a lot of the CCIM courses that came to the board back in the day. But in 2016, she became a CCIM. CCIM stands for Certified Commercial Investment Member, and it's a huge accomplishment in commercial real estate to get that designation. She has sold over 500 acres of development land, is a Medallion Club member, and was with her previous brokerage, the top 1% CB International. Also a huge accomplishment. She is also a valued instructor at our board and teaches all about strata windups. Welcome, Alana.
Hi.
So next we have Joe Varing. Joe is hyper-focused and specializes in selling development land and investment properties in the Fraser Valley. And he does do a lot of that. In fact, when you go to his website, which I absolutely love, by the way, it says we sell dirt. That's an awesome logo that you've got. By combining decades of experience, a wealth of industry resources, and unmatched passion for real estate, Joe offers extensive knowledge and strategic tailored advice to clients and landowners alike. His technical expertise and analytical mindset makes for a unique client experience. It's no wonder that so many landowners turn to Joe for a lot of advice. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.
Great. So before we get going on the way I just want to kind of do a little bit of housekeeping. So one of the things that we're going to do today is a little different. We're not doing full-on presentations. We're planning to do more of a Zoom style fireside chat, I guess, without the fireplace. We've prepared a list of questions for the panelists, and I'm going to be answering each panelist a series of various questions, and they'll answer, and then we'll probably get into some conversation around those questions as well. We ask that anyone in the audience that is wishing to ask a question can do so by placing it in the Q&A function. If you're directing your question to a specific panelist, be sure to include their name so that I know when I'm directing the question to the group who to ask. We have a lot of attendees today, so there may be a lot of questions and we may not get to all of them. And so if we don't panic, because the good news is Alana is in the process right now of creating a brand new course at the board. It's called it will be called Land, Assembly and Development. So if you don't get your question asked today of the panelists, then, by all means, sign up once you see that new course come out. By all means, please sign up, and maybe Alana and others will be able to help you get the answers. So moving right along, I think we'll just go straight into a few questions. First couple of questions I'm going to just ask are kind of a little bit of icebreaker questions, just to get a little bit of understanding about who you all are and what your specialty is. First question. In 1 or 2 words, how would you describe working with land assemblies? Alana, 1 or 2 words.
Challenging and frustrating.
Challenging and frustrating. Yeah, I can see that. What about you, Michelle?
Well, it's fun and challenging.
Yeah, challenging seems to be the theme. So, and Joe, what about you?
Complex and competitive.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, with the number of attendees we have, I'm assuming that would be definitely a word I would use too, competitive. So second question. So can you describe what your area of focus or specialization is? So in other words, is there a geographical area that you kind of specialize in? And what are the types of clients that you typically deal with when dealing in either land assemblies or selling land or development? Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, usually mostly local people and homeowner, and some overseas, but mainly in Vancouver.
Oh, mainly in the Vancouver market area?
Yes, mainly Vancouver and Richmond, sometimes Burnaby as well.
Oh, okay. Excellent. And what about you, Joe? I know I said Fraser Valley, but that's a big area. So
Yeah, thanks, Tammy. So our focus is definitely the Fraser Valley, basically from Chilliwack to Delta, mostly concentrated in Langley, Surrey, and our we deal with both landowners and developers. We've got both sides of it, depending on what the assignment is and depending on who we're representing and how we're moving forward. But yeah, we deal with both landowners and developers in the valley.
excellent. So and what about you, Alana? What would be your specialty and area of kind of expertise?
Yeah, well, I do a lot of I do strata windups. So with the strata windup, I get a nice piece of real estate that I'm trying to wind up. But to add to the site, I'll add the houses around it or buildings around it, either an apartment block or any houses that are around it. I used to do strictly just land assemblies with just houses when I started 30 something odd years ago. But now I just find that in order to make my site my already lovely site bigger, or sometimes you need to make it bigger. I need to make it bigger just to get them more buildable. Then I will approach the neighbors and add on that way. And I'm in the process of doing that with 2 that I have listed currently. So
Yeah,
it's very
yeah, and
add on.
strata windups are obviously a unique entity under their own, because you're dealing with the strata corporation and so many owners. And I can well imagine that can get a little complex as well.
Yeah, it's a little different strata
A
windup.
little different.
Strata windups are a little different land assemblies. I mean, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah, but the land around them is important. So that's what this is for.
makes sense for sure. So, Joe, a quick question for you. Can you explain what the purpose of a land assembly is? And why is there so much hype around land assembly? I mean, we've got major numbers in our attendance today, and there seems to be a lot of hype around it. So can you kind of enlighten us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So land assembly, it's obviously assembling multiple contiguous properties and bringing multiple landowners together to take it to market, whereby a developer will, can look at the opportunity and save himself from going to assemble land himself. In the Fraser Valley, land assemblies are actually not, haven't been that popular, but have been this year, of course, because the reason for that is we have a lot of land, greenfield land, large parcels of land in the Fraser Valley out of the ALR. So there's a lot of land available here when you look on Google Maps or different city websites. Now, just with the way the market's been in the last year and a half, a lot of the properties within NCPs, neighborhood concept plans, OCPs, city official community plans, a lot of the larger properties, call it 1, 2, 3 acre properties or larger, have been snatched up this year. It's been quite profound based on the activity in the land space this year, in the last 12 months. So therefore, that's forcing developers now to be creative, because and do put multiple owners together, and areas specifically where there's a lot of land assembly is actually in the city of Surrey, Surrey Central, White Rock, other smaller nodes of Surrey, city of Langley, because those area plans offer significant density, like high rise or 4-story, 6-story. So therefore, land assemblies in the Fraser Valley are concentrated mostly in those areas within the valley. We have a lot of land out here. We have hundreds of years of land supply, despite what the media or the boards say. I mean, we have lots and lots of land, but again, a lot of it is not in an OCP, not an NCP. So therefore, people are obviously gravitating towards the lands that are within NCPs first, so that they know where their destiny lies when they can develop it. And other developers, a lot of Vancouver developers, I find, Michelle and Alana probably deal with these guys more so than I, when they're coming out to the valley, they don't like the greenfield stuff. They want infill. So they'll go to Surrey Center and assemble multiple properties before they'll go to Willoughby and buy a 2-acre property where they have to wait miles and miles and miles for services to arrive. So yeah, it's been a really interesting, complex, challenging, and very competitive year. So
Yeah.
it's been good.
Yeah, Michelle, do you find that the people who are looking for land in the Vancouver market are obviously going to approach it slightly different than what they would if they were going out into the valley? So do you find that their approach is different in some ways?
I would think so, because it's quite obvious in the past 10 years, because I started doing that over 10 years. And then I think the people that they see a lot of development site along the arterial street. And then I think the topics already goes around neighbors. What's going on in our areas? I see a lot of 6-story condo, high rise or townhomes, something under construction, pre-selling sign. So I think that is quite of a type of a topic for among neighbors. And at the same time, they do approach with realtors or developers, submitting their offer door to door, sit down and talk with them. So I think that may makes them, once they find out what's going on in our area. Right. And at the same time, they heard a lot of people saying, oh, wow, if we're going to group together, we can get extra dollars, and why not? Although some of them, they don't even have any plans ahead of time, but you've seen the neighbors that's going to have a big change. While they wants to be included, at least they wants to know like what's their plan and where they're going to go. Are they living in the same area, same environment, or anything that is going to affect their living like standard in the same area? So I think that may mix a lot of topics and conversation among neighbors and in the area as well.
That makes sense. So Alana, what kind of steps do you take to identify land and qualify it as well as being a potential land assembly?
Well, Joe kind of touched on it, with first of all, older, busy streets. The city will rezone and look at the NCP and OCPs, and you're going to find the busy streets are the first to change over. So the cities will look at higher densities on the main drags because of number one, our infrastructure and transportation's there. So developers don't want to build when they're too far away from transportation. And again, Joe mentioned, there's a lot going on out in the valley with your, the new line, right? They're supposed to be putting in the new ALRT. So, anywhere where there might be a new station, the city's rezoned it for higher density. So, anywhere, I just go straight to the OCPs and see what the city sweep has done to rezone land. And then those are the areas that we're going to want to start to assemble, because the OCP or NCP is really what developers care about. As long as we, throw in a development permit within those guidelines, the city's going to approve it. Full rezones, that's too much work. When there's, the city's constantly upgrading. All cities, not just Vancouver, all cities are upgrading their OCPs and NCPs for more density. So that's where you would look first, no question. And around new stations, like Joe said, right?
Right. Joe, do you find that to be the same out in the valley? You're looking basically at the OCP and NCP, or is there other qualifications because there is more land out there?
Oh, I mean, to hyper focus on land assemblies, yeah, certainly we have to look at OCPs, NCPs to see, where those consolidation zones are within the municipalities. And as Alana said, I mean, there's a new rapid bus routes being planned, and there's obviously the SkyTrain from King George to City of Langley. So that whole route is being assembled as we speak, and has been. There's been a lot of developer activity there in the last 12 or 18 months there. So so I think it's certainly OCPs, NCPs, and knowing your product and knowing what the potential is, FSR wise, 6-story or is it high rise and that sort of thing, and then also services, to make sure there's adequate services there for the project actually to get built in a reasonable time frame. So yeah, absolutely.
That makes sense. So Michelle, you have obviously you've done a lot of land assemblies over the years, and so what are some of the techniques that you use? I don't know if technique is the right word, but what are, how do you, there's so many realtors that want to get involved in doing land assemblies. What are some of the techniques that you've used or found that to be useful in getting involved?
Sure, Tammy. I think I'd like to share that in the past many years, I'm doing a lot of land assembly. I think a teamwork is very important, like having a good team working together. And then we also have a well-organized system that helps. Like, for example, your product launch. We always have to update what's going on in the city. Is any changing of the city plan? And also that we need to understand what you're doing, first of all, before you educate your client. Okay. And we, every time when we pick up some inquiry from the owners about what's the potential in my area, can you give me some basic idea? Then we'll do some of internal research. Like, for example, if we do have any question, that we will send an email to city planner or some of the expert to find out what is going on, or anything that we're missing before we set up at times to go over detail with the owners. And And some of the technique that we do is, I think most important is like to get our clients to understand what they're going to do, like if they're going to join together. Like, for example, they may not know the land assembly like situation is like, they may not know they may not close their deal within a month. They may have to wait for another a year to move out, or some of the seller that they may thinking, oh, wow, then I have extra dollars, I can find a better place, but thinking about that is going to be maybe after a year, it's going to be happen. So you have to let them know ahead of time and let them prepare and make them feel a trust on you, because you provide them what the value is, and to help them to listen carefully with them, maybe to bring them out to make sure that they feel comfortable moving out this area.
Right.
Well, so I'm always be positive and patient and be fair to them. I think that's most likely my skill on land assembly.
Yeah, yeah, and dealing with a lot of people as well, right? Being able to, yeah.
Because
So-
they're very different, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So product knowledge obviously is a huge thing in land assembly. It sounds like you not only have to understand what the local communities that you're working in are doing or planning to do within either the neighborhood or the community as a whole, but also understanding the product of what you're trying to sell as well. So Alana, how much does, like, I mean, the OCP and the NCP play into the decisions, but how much, like, how do you make decisions based on just looking at a piece of paper where you've got a, you know, this is what's scheduled, this is what's planned for the next 5 years, and then, you know, City Hall changes,
Yeah,
and
it's a
the
good
plan
question.
changes, and all of a sudden you have to change. How do you
It's a
deal
good
with that? Like,
question,
what do
yeah.
you do?
Yeah, there's so, keep in mind, everybody, that, when you're doing these land assemblies, Michelle's got a great team that, helps her to do a lot of this work, but, don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Pick an area that you like, get to know the OCP and NCP. Again, like Joe works a large area, but if you want to start with land assemblies, the OCP and NCP just get really, really knowledgeable about those areas in a certain neighborhood that you want to do, right? And then from there, you want to work your numbers backwards and see what your new product will sell for there, and before you can determine whether the property is going to be worth it for a land assembly. So, the obvious would be things like, little old houses on a busy street, and we're allowed to put a 6-story building up. Well, those are, that's going to be kind of a trigger for you to realize that this could be a really good land assembly. But that's why, we don't want to overwhelm you here with all this OCP and NCP, but you need to know that they're, take little areas and study them, and then start assembling them and start working the numbers backwards. What can we build on the property? And then how much is it going to cost? I mean, it's a little bit of a formula, but it's an easy one when you see it, when you see the actual real estate that can be redone. And remember that your OCP is kind of your Bible, if I can say that, because whatever it says, you're going to be able to follow through with it, and the developer will be happy,
Exactly. So, and of course, understanding what the values of the various properties are selling for as well is huge. And not all of those end up getting sold on MLS. So, I mean, having the ability to be able to look up land sales on, for example, Commercial Edge, I'll throw a little punch in there for that one. It's a great opportunity to be able to see what properties are selling for as well. So that comes back down to your product knowledge as well.
That helps a lot. Any type of research you can do, or phone Michelle, or phone Joe, or don't be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I want to do this project and I don't know what I'm doing. You got to start somewhere. I mean, sometimes you can just get lucky and assemble them. And the realtor, another realtor will come in with the developer and offer for you, and it's your job to move forward with that. But don't be afraid to jump in. Just don't overpromise. That's the big thing. And like Michelle said, make sure you educate your sellers about the time frame. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
people think that they can assemble and then poof, it's a party and, you know, they're going to get all this money and be moving in a few months, right? Like Michelle said, you got to educate them and make sure that they understand this is a long process. This isn't
Yeah,
a quick dollar by any means, and it's a bit of a long process. So.
yeah, for sure. So Joe, speaking of process, great lead in there. Thank you, Alana. Understanding the process, including kind of what's expected for the community growth, is obviously important. But what kind of business tools and strategies do you use, Joe, when it comes to figuring out where those perfect spots are for those land assemblies or selling land?
So what I do personally is kind of what Alana has touched on is you really got to understand the OCP and NCP. You know, like there's just no two ways about it, right? And then you've got to pick an area which you want to farm, and you want to be, you know, the expert, you know, if I may, for the area. And then it's just going out and having, you know, honest conversations with landowners to see what their expectations are, and if those expectations align with kind of the market, you know. Like you said, commercial edge, auto prop, there's a number of programs out there that one could use to kind of know exactly, hey, there's a pocket here. I feel that it's worth assembling. There's not been a lot of activity in there yet. There's no development applications in there. So maybe it's an opportune time for, you know, for a Joe or for Alana or for Michelle to go in and take a look at what the deal is. And then you'd have to go to the OCP, NCP to ensure you can educate landowners, with what their land is actually worth, with the comparables, you know. So that's the technical research side, and I know Michelle's got a team doing research for her, right? So it's a lot of work. And then the strategy side is to sell them on yourself. You do have to have a track record, right? I mean, landowners are gonna ask you, well, what have you sold? What other land assemblies have you done, you know? So, and if you haven't sold any, or you've sold a couple, you know, then you've got to be creative. You have to obviously, tell them about all the research, all the homework you've done. You know, you can, you know, name drop city officials, right? Maybe you have a good relationship with a planner in the city of Vancouver or the city of Surrey. So you know, that could help you build a rapport and build that relationship and build that trust with one or a few landowners. So there's just various tools, and there's great organizations like there's Haven, which is the Home Builders Association of Lower Mainland here, HAVAN. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. There's UDI, you know, the Urban Development Institute. So there's just lots of great resources for somebody to get, you know, really in tune with if this is for them or not. So again, I'm not trying to get too technical, but I think someone would need to be certainly passionate and committed to the process. And as Alana said, you know, it's not this quick turnaround thing. You know, you have to really manage owners' expectations from the get-go, and to ensure that, you know, you're not over promising and under delivering, that you're actually, you know, under promising and over delivering, right? You know, so and once you've got one or two under your belt, those guys will be your greatest advocates. Those guys will give you testimonials. Those guys will give you, you know, be your references and resources, you know, to do your next land assembly. So you can really parlay, if you do it right and you're committed, I think you can parlay a success into and open up, you know, turn windows into doors, and you know how it all goes, you know, right? So yeah, not to get too motivational, but you know, there's a certain energy that one would need to assemble all the information, make sense of the information, and then execute on the information, and then relay that information in a fashion where it makes sense to landowners, and then bring them together and then take it to market.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Yeah. I think obviously, I mean, we all know that product knowledge and understanding of what market conditions are in real estate in general is hugely important. But I would think when you're dealing with multiples and the complexities of land assembly, it's even more so important in understanding. It's one thing, you know, selling an individual house, but having multiple homes and homeowners with different ideas and all the rest of it, it's got to be a little more complex.
Yeah,
So
usually
doing your homework is important.
absolutely, Tammy. And usually if we're looking at a neighborhood, we will have already talked to the city planner, the city engineer. We'll have talked to, maybe an architect or two, just to see actually, can we fit this FSR on these properties so that we know that we can do all that. We'll have talked to environmentalists for any creeks or any other riparian issues. We'll have obviously search titles, pull all the encumbrances on title to make, there could be some limiting factors. So, once you do that level of homework and then you call a landowner, listen, you're going to have their attention. They're going to say, wow, you haven't even met me yet. And you've got a binder of information on my property. Boy, I've lived here for 40 years and you've come to my door. You're going to get their attention. And they're going to see the authenticity and how diligent you are. And then they'll never forget that meeting with you. This is my experience, my personal experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So Michelle, in that same vein, like Joe, you may not deal with, because you're dealing with larger parcels of land a lot of times when you're doing up the developments, but Michelle, you're constantly probably having to assemble multiple groups of people together and try to figure out how to make this happen. What kind of tactics do you use to help your clients make an informed decision about whether or not they should join in on a land assembly? So, and especially, if there happens to be a holdout, what kind of tactics do you use?
Usually, there are so many, there's so many holdout in the city, right? And there's a different type of holdout, I would say. How do we deal with it? I will separate two categories. One is unreasonable holdout, and the other one is like they hold out with reason. So you have to figure it out, like what is unreasonable holdout? That means they did it on purpose. Say, for example, they know that they have a high expectation, and they know that the whole block, they need me. Without me, that it won't happen. So maybe their corner lot, or maybe their lot is like big enough to make it happen. So then, but they think that if they're the last one on board, that they may get the best dollar, and they know what's the whole thing. So that's why that's one type of the holdout. And the second is that, well, they want to sell, but because of certain reason, I have a long-term lease tenant there, or the property, I cannot sell this year because of the kind of like capital gain issue, personal reason, or I'm too sick. I don't think it's work out. So they may have reasons. So this type of holdouts, how can we deal with it? I would say if you can prepare well enough from the beginning, like what Joe just mentioned, that like if you have a kind of like a preparation from the beginning, know what's going on, and explain to them what's the potential and the time frames, timeline they're gonna wait, or something is already going on in this area, and let them know ahead of time, and they will open their conversation and share with you. They may even book an appointment and say, oh, Michelle, well, since I also want to find out what can I do if it is something really is going to happen in my block. Can you advise me what should I do? Should I prepare to look for something else? Can I afford to buy something else in the same area? What's your opinion, or what's the time frame I need to wait? If the neighbor, they're going to proceed, then am I left over? I mean, I'm the only one left behind here. They're panicking, actually. I usually be really nice to them and explain to them, just don't be that panic, because there's a lots of solution. It may not be happen right away. So I would say you need to listen carefully to understand what they're really concerned, to try to help them and solve their problem before you start to market, before you start to assemble the whole block. Then it can minimize and avoid lots of headache at the end of the day. And then, you know what, sometimes you're well prepared from the beginning, and they all raise up their hand, okay, I'm gonna work together, and hopefully we can get a good dollar or good developer to buy this site. But then once they see so many response and they start to be greedy, they want to, oh, wow, I think I need to have more dollar, or because of the real estate market going up so quick, they think, oh, I may not be able to afford or to trace the quick market. So they cannot afford to buy anything. Then it comes to a question and hold out at that stage. Then I usually will share with among all the neighborhood. I mean, all the neighbor that they joined from the beginning, and then we'll talk to them and share with them, hey, there's something happening with one of the owner that they may change their mind because of certain reason, although it's unreasonable holdout or reasonable hold. I have to share with the neighbor and let them decide what do they want to do.
Right.
Okay. At the end of the day, maybe they may say, oh, maybe it is not at the right time. Maybe wait for next year. I have a experience. One thing I want to share with you is that I have assembled one block that I'm working on an offer, and one of the owner changed my exactly the same situation at the last moment. And then one owner from that block never have anyone say from the beginning, it just whatever, just following the neighbors. At the end of the day, she raised up her hand and say, okay, if that neighbor would like to have more dollar, I don't mind to compensate. I don't mind to cut off some of my money to compensate for that deal.
Wow.
And this is very generous, but it's seldom in this situation, but it happens to me one times. And yeah, so
Wow.
really nice neighborhood.
Yeah, so understanding who your sellers are, all of them, their motivations, all of those things makes a big difference in understanding how to put the assembly together.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. There's a question coming from the attendees. What do you do when you have a critical property to an assembly that has no financial motivation and just wants to remain in the status quo? So it kind of falls into when you running into like a holdout, but if there's actually no financial motivation for that owner to want to join in on an assembly, what are the other things that you can do? What are some other tactics? Michelle, would you know?
It is, yeah, it is happens all the times that, like, especially in Vancouver, those people that they have money, they have no rush to sell, even though the question for me is like, if I sold my property, I don't know what to use with my money. So what can we do? They have no plans, nothing. Sometimes that I think the neighbor, if we can, it's not the neighbor like giving them pressure or that type, but sometimes it's a discussion. So if you can get them in and then to share with them what the neighbors want, and what's their reason behind, if they can find, like, well, I think it's open discussions to kind of to find a solution. But if it is, as I say, if it's unreasonable holdout, definitely you never can find a solution.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. So the holdout, the motivation of sellers is one area that you have to kind of overcome. Alana, in your experience, what are some of the other things that you need to overcome? You were talking previously about importance of timelines. How do you manage that? The ability to say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and what are the timelines involved, and how do you manage that?
Well, you got to be really cognizant of timelines, like Michelle said. When you're in the middle of a land assembly and you've got sellers that the market is rising, that's a little terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially with how it's been going up so much in the last few years. You got to be careful that you aren't out, selling their property for too little so that they can't get out. But, Michelle was talking a lot about these holdouts and timelines, and, it's the whole system of a land assembly is a lot different than just selling houses. You got to remember that, you guys. It's more about the numbers, and it's more about the math and what can be built on the property. And it's not as an emotion, is you're not selling Aunt Betty's house. You're selling a chunk of land. That's it. And the sellers have to understand that it's just all business. And Michelle's got a really nice touch in that she does talk to everyone and keeps everyone on the same line. But at the end of the day, she's explaining that this is just business. So timelines are important because, there's only this opportunity for this timeline. And then, if you don't want to do it now, well, then then the time has passed. So if you don't jump on now, you've given up this opportunity. So it is just business. So it's a lot different when you're assembling properties together. And what is there's so many, what if someone dies in the middle of your land assembly, and then you've got to wait for your you got to wait for your your probate to go through. That's another timeline issue. What if the developer goes in and does work on this? This doesn't happen too much to Joe, but for Michelle, what if they go on and they do an environmental on the property and find out that in fact the property is contaminated? What does that do to the timeline? These are all really, as an agent doing these assemblies, you've got to be cognizant of all these issues that can come up that sway your timeline way off. And then you're going to lose some of the people that you might have had on board before, right?
Right.
So yeah, it's timelines are a tough one, boy. Yeah, no question.
Yes.
Yeah. There's another question coming from the audience here. I thought I'd just toss in here. Realistically, what should 6 individual owners expect time-wise if their homes are assembled for future redevelopment? Is this a 2, 3, 4 or more year average timeline? Do developers often allow owners to stay in their home during the permit application? So Michelle, like dealing with a lot of homeowners, that's a great question, timeline wise. Is it a 2, 3, 4 or more year timeline, or is it, can they stay in their homes while this is happening?
Yeah, that is a very good question. I think there's most of the owner, they're concerning about the timelines, but it's all different because I have been doing with a very short timeline that they're a developer, that they know what they're doing in this area. They're very familiar. They usually make the timeline very short. I would say is within only like 2 months time for their subject removal. But some of the developer that they wants to make sure that they have big enough of the site to develop, and then so many other study they wants to go through, then usually the timeline is about for their due diligence subjects, usually takes about 6 months. And for the rezoning subject application, usually about another year or more. So total timeframes, I think they expect about 1.5 years. And after that, I usually see the cases that the seller will ask for another 6 months, max to 1 year to stay there for free after closing.
Right, right.
So by then, that means that they already have the money because they already closed the deal in 1.5 years. So once they have the money, they still can look around property and stay there for another couple months, max for 1 year, to slowly move out to the next property. So that usually the timeline. Do you have anything you want to add on, Joe?
Well, I agree. Exactly what Michelle said, Tammy. Same thing. So when we're doing land assemblies, or even if we're selling a property to a developer, a single property, closings can be anywhere from 6 to 18 months. I usually don't want them tied to zoning because a developer could drag his feet to get the zoning so that he can have a longer time to close. So we usually want a firm deal pretty quick because we're dealing with sophisticated developers. And so there'd be a short due diligence, non-refundable deposit, call it a 12-month close, and hopefully a 12 or 24-month rent-free period after that, depending on where the property is. See, if it's
Right.
Surrey City Center, I know City of Surrey, to get a development application through, it might take you 2-3 years. So why should the homeowner move out a year before and the home's not going to be demoed for another year? So it's kind of unfair. So I usually put the seller reserves the right to rent back the property at $0 for up until the purchaser has a demolition permit in hand, right? So then there's some triggers so that my landowner is not out and he reserves that right. So yeah, basically what Michelle said, we would try to, because developers are sophisticated, they're all about the numbers. They don't need hand holding. It's there's no emotion there. It's just the deal. And so the landowner is the one that needs the help, needs the advice, needs the guidance. And so therefore, our fiduciary duty and our duty are, to a landowner are immense as realtors, because we want to make sure we give them the absolute best advice and include as much in the contract as we can in their favor, and then
Well,
kind
and
of,
that's huge, and that's huge. And so lots of times too, like, we don't want to give them the chance to just tie up properties with options and
Yeah.
go through and take their time to get their zoning. So like Joe said, it's good to have triggers in there that they have to give up money, or if they need more time at City Hall, which happens sometimes because, our city halls aren't running as fast or they're just busy. And sure, we'll give you more time just with a little bit more of a non-refundable deposit, right? So, the developer wants to move ahead, but he needs more time. That's fine. Just write us a check and we'll carry on. So
Yeah.
it's not unreasonable at
Exactly.
all, right? So not us, the sellers, unfortunately, but you know what I mean, right?
I also want to add on is that some of the seller that they may ask like why the developer will give them a free rent and any reason. I think another reason is they want to keep the house not vacant, right? Because it's going to take over a year for them for the application and for the studying and whatever. They don't want to have nobody taking care of homes, right? So that is the reason.
You don't want the vagrants moving in and, and any kind of destruction as well. So that makes good sense.
That's interesting. We've got another, going back to the research side of understanding where to get information on land assemblies. We've got quite a few questions coming from the audience on that. One of them here is, how do I find the history of the sale so that I can do a comparative market analysis for a land assembly? Does anyone know what is the current price per square foot for condominium land assemblies versus townhomes? So that research, going back to that research question side of it, what are some of the business tools? I know a couple were mentioned. Joe, what are some of the business tools that you use?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy one. So MLS is okay, not your be all end all. Commercial Edge, Autoprop, RealNet. These are some great programs where and again, if you don't want to spread yourself too thin when you're doing land assembly work. And Michelle is fairly hyper focused. Alana is obviously focused on strata windups. I think you want to focus in on a neighborhood or certain areas within OCPs. And if you just if you're just there, you're tracking things, you're looking at things, you're talking to landowners, the more connections you make, telephone, belly to belly connections you make in that specific area, you will get all the answers to your questions from doing that. The Commercial Edge, because the thing with Commercial Edge is that it tells you when the deal transacted. It doesn't tell you when the document was actually inked. If a contract was inked 2 years ago, it doesn't tell you that. It tells you when it closed. So it could be very misleading as well. So I think your connections and your door knocking or whatever, however you farm, those conversations are going to tell you what the values are real time in different pockets, and every pocket's different. Michelle has her work cut out for her. Her price per square foot changes like across the street. It'll probably be double on one side and half the price on the other side. We don't have it that bad out here, but it might get that way in 30, 40 years because the land's being snatched up. Yeah, that would be my advice. I think the people are going to tell you what the land is worth, and then you can just go verify and cross-reference that. That's been my experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michelle, so I've got another question here from the audience. It says, I've heard that there's a database where developers record and share sales info on their land acquisitions. Is this true? And is this info available to realtors? Because again, trying to find out what the value of deals that have happened. Are you guys familiar with any database?
Nope.
Sign me up.
Sign me up too, yeah.
And then I have.
I'm writing a check right now.
Okay, so that answered that question pretty quick. I'm just going to go straight to, because we're getting a lot of questions from the audience, and some of them are very applicable to what we're talking about right now. So here's a question to Michelle. Does the newer recently built homes on the land assembly typically receive a higher price compared to, say, the older homes that may be in the neighborhood, assuming they're the same size lots?
No, definitely not. I think the developer mostly pay on only the size of the lot. So if you've got a bigger lot, you got more money because based on the size of the lot. But if you got a small lot with a brand new home, well, they're not going to pay the new home's value. It's only based on the lot size.
Right. That's interesting.
Only about the land. When land
the
is only,
land.
it's
They're
only
buying
about
the land.
The developer
Yeah.
doesn't care about the house. He's not gonna use it. He's not taking it with him.
It's like Joe's slogan. We
Or you can suggest them to
dirt.
sell their new homes to like other people if they want.
Right, right. Another question, can you address the homeowners regarding future real estate market value with specific clauses in the CPS to make sure that they can be compensated should the market go up? Like, are there, you know, when you were talking about how homeowners might, you know, all of a sudden in a rising market, is there ways that you can contractually control or help landowners deal with that?
So I can touch on that, but I've
Sure.
never done that, and I think that can get pretty messy pretty quick, because how do you actually quantify how much a market's gone up by?
Yeah.
It would be difficult, I think, for parties to agree, and it's just a way to kind of frustrate a contract that's just been written. You know, that's my own opinion. The other thing is, you know, these landowners, and this is, you know, a realtor's responsibility, in my opinion, to recommend at least to a landowner who has sold, who has a significant deposit, that it's that landowner's responsibility to go and put that money to work and not leave it in his under his mattress. You know, so he could also go option some property somewhere, or he could go get some, you know, bridge financing, because he can go to the bank and show his firm contract on his property, take the deposit and go buy something. You know, obviously there's risks that the developer doesn't close, but there's ways for that landowner to mitigate this market to go up another 50% between contract date and closing date. So there's just ways for landowners just to be aware that we do live in the Lower Mainland. We do not live in a place that's affordable, and it's just going to every day get more and more unaffordable. So affordability is just it's not going to happen in Lower Mainland. So they have to go and prices are going to rise, you know, the way that they have been, and probably more. So it's just a way for them to be smart with, once they have a deposit, they got a firm deal, that they'll go put that money to work.
Right, right. That makes sense. So when you're, here's another good question coming out, a little bit about the problems with regards to the timelines of trying to do certain things. The question from the audience is, when assembling, is there a developer caveat or option whereby they can back out of the deal if their diligence shows that their projected FSRs are not realistic? So municipal moratoriums, for example, what is a typical subject removal period for a developer when attempting to assemble? Does someone
That's all
want
under the
to
due
grab onto that
diligence
one?
subject. That's all under your due diligence subject, right? So, I mean, the developer has the right to do a subject to due diligence. It can be anywhere from 90 days to 6 months, depending on, you know, how grateful we want to be to the developer. But absolutely, you know, the OCP is there to give us a good guidance, right? But, you know, the developer goes in there and finds out, oh my gosh, there's all these easements, there's these orphan laneways, there's all this other stuff, and, you know, or the city's going to make them build you know, a big playground in the middle of the development. You know, these all just crash and burn his bottom line at the end of the day. So it's not, you know, we can build so much you know, on a piece of real estate, and then the developer comes in, you know, we can tell them we can build this much, and then they go into City Hall and they find out not, this is, you know, what they build and what they sell are two different things, which is very true. Like, especially you get that a lot with towers, right? It's quantifiable as to how much real estate they can sell, because the city's taking so much for them to get that high up, right? So the city wants a community center, the city wants, you know, daycare, the city wants this, and the city, but the developer still has to build it. So does it work at the end of the day? Does FSR work? Do the numbers work? That's all under due diligence. Yep, they can walk away. And that's, you know, and then as realtors, we have to look at our purchase price and say, is this, you know, maybe we can't build as much as we wanted. So, you know, if a developer does do that and walk away, then we're probably too high on our price.
Right, right. So, Michelle, here's a question to you. How do you deal with an orphan lot? So like, what is the solution to that, or is there a solution for it?
Yeah, there's actually, you can see a few of orphan lot, even along Canby. That means that they are like their neighbor, their developer is only them is sitting there with the same property in there. I think maybe I think Alana may know that it's a city that they also talks about some program for an auction lot. They can maybe build a few houses on one lot. I think that that's the only solution that they can do.
You might
Otherwise,
get a duplex out of the deal at the end of the day, right? You know, or
exactly.
fourplex, depending how big it is. But, you know, orphan lots are really, you know, I mean, some cities won't even let you do that. Some cities won't even let you do an orphan lot, right? Or if they're really pushing, you know, I mean, I looked at something in Port Moody, and under an RM7, they won't leave an orphan lot. So some deals they can collapse because you have an orphan lot, right? Others, other cities will allow it because of where the lot is located. But, you know, at the end of the day, we always say, you know, if you don't want to sell, then enjoying the land is only, then you can be a parking lot. No, I'm kidding. but actually, that's my close. I'll be parking my car in your lot later when, you know, after we build this nice building here. No, I'm teasing. But, you know, there's some cities won't allow it, but you know, Michelle's got a great point. You know, at least the ones that do will let you like upbuild a bit. But, you know, again, you're not going to get what you're going to get if you join the assembly, if you're an orphan lot. I don't care. There was one story I got when I first started selling real estate. I met Nelson Scalbania, and he really wanted a property down on Beach. And it was, I can't remember, it was G Beach. And anyways, it's long and short, he had the neighbor and he wanted this lot that was on the water side on Beach. And it was in a very large site. And long and short, he actually offered the man he was an elderly fellow that lived there, and he ended up living quite a while, and never did sell to Scalbania. But anyway, he gave him like a Rolls Royce as a deposit. He tried everything to get this lot, man. He wanted, and this fellow, he was just, he was a character, dude. And he even hired me and my partner to go in because he was hoping that two young girls would, you know, sway this older fellow to sell it. Anyways, he wouldn't do it, no way. And I just saw it sell like 10 years ago, which is interesting. But, you know, if you ever drive down Beach, you'll see a little old house there. And I can't remember the cross street now, but it's one of the first ones that you see on your left-hand side. And you'll see like a 6-story building, which Scalbania built. And then the neighbor was this little old house, and that guy wouldn't sell it. So you just never know, right? And there's an orphan lot. What can you build there? Probably another 6 units now, but you know, pretty good story. Yeah, not even a Rolls Royce would switch them.
No,
switch me, but not.
Yeah. One question here, Michelle, for you is: are purchase prices negotiated separately with each landlord or landowner, or is the goal to get everyone to agree on the price per buildable foot and get the price the same based on the land footprint? It was kind of similar to the last question that you had, but you know, obviously it's about the land. So what's your thoughts on that question?
Yes, I think for me, I usually will based on again the size of the lot, and then times the density. Let's say if it is going to be a 6-story rental, that is about like density of 2.5 FSR, then times the market per buildable cost per land. So that formula, that's how we get up to the purchase, the pricing for each homeowner. Although some of them, they're pretty like different. It all depends. That's why I'm saying usually I would talk to the seller from the beginning to see what their goal. And some exceptional cases that some of the nice owner that they will allow one of their newer home or more value home to let them to have a little bit more than like based on the formula that we propose, but we need to be upfront and transparency from the beginning. So everybody like they agree with it, then we're going to proceed at the end. But just based on the size of the lot.
Exactly. So Joe, this is a question from the audience. How do you determine the time you're going to commit to spend arranging an assembly? In other words, what are some of the red flags that you go, you know what? No, I'm not dealing with that. I'm out. I'm not going to spend the time, you know, from a realtor perspective.
I think, you know, I think it really comes down to how bad would the market want this property or this area? How bad would the market want to be in this area? And then that would drive how bad I would want it, as well. And so that would be the driving factor. But if there's like Michelle and Alana said, particularly Michelle, if there's holdouts or if there's orphan lots, if there's city requirements that are onerous, and there's road patterns being changed and lanes being required, and then obviously then it's just a business decision to just simply go on to the next type of thing, go to the next street, go to the next block. But I mean if now on the other hand, if you were to assemble 4 or 5 lots, like Michelle said, she brought up a great point, is that if you assemble 5 lots and you've got them listed, you've gone to market, but the landowners decide that they're going to change the goalpost on you, right? And if one landowner changes the goalpost, the other guys might start changing their goalposts, and all of a sudden your wheels are falling off of the bus. Then you've got a decision to make as a realtor that, hey, are you going to respectfully walk away, right, from this assembly, and I think that then take the high road as far as, hey guys, I just can't work because the goalposts keep changing, or are you going to continue with the land that you've assembled and try to manage expectations to hope the market catches up, or you can propose different terms and conditions in your listing contract to the owners and say, look guys, since we've changed the goalpost, I got to extend my listing contract by 12 months or by 8 months because I can't perform in the next 60 days type of thing. So I think every situation is a little bit different, but no, I'm sure Michelle has more so than me, but I've respectfully and happily walked away from a lot of business, just and out of respect for people, because at the end of the day, if the job doesn't get done, regardless of the circumstances, and they're always going to say the realtor couldn't get it done, right? So they're going to forget all of the vigor and the energy that had to go into assemble and then take to market, so that's hopefully that answers the question.
That's great. Did either of you have anything to add to that, or we're good?
He's good.
That's good. So a quick question for this one's to Alana and Joe. Any suggestions on how to deal with tenants when you're trying to do a land assembly? And this could be for you too, Michelle. I'm sure you've run into that type of scenario. So Alana, dealing with
tenants has so much power, and it's up to you're dealing with the seller, you're not dealing with the tenant. The developer is not going to come to the property, so we don't have any showing issues. The only trouble we have is when they come on the land to do geotech work or surveys, or and then we notify the tenant. But these processes are not quick. So, if you have a seller and you communicate with your seller, like Michelle said, and you make sure that seller negotiates with the tenant to get the tenant out in time. That's, there's a form called mutual agreement to end a tenancy. You make sure that bad boy's signed. You've got time, you're making money on the sale. If you have to pay the tenant out eventually, I mean, even if they've got a lease for a year, it's going to be a year, so it's not a big issue. So when they go to renew, you've got an opportunity there. Worst case scenario, you guys, we're always got the 4 months development permit if the developer's okay with that, right? We issue them a development permit, they have to go. So, but yeah, tenants are touchy, and always be afraid if you have too many on the site, and that you're educating the sellers to know how to explain to them to get them out, because developers don't want to be landlords, so it's the last thing you want. Always. Yeah. Anything else, Joe?
Yeah. So my experience with tenants has been actually pretty great, pretty remarkable. And the reason I think for that is that, some landlords don't want their tenant to know they're selling because they want to list exclusively and so on and so forth. I always find that as a problem, a red flag, to be honest with you, because I think it's the tenant's going to find out sooner or later. And a tenant's a human being, right? I mean, they have a family, they live there, it's their home, right? So you want to, I think when I go and knock on a door and there's a tenant there and I tell them, hey, look, I'm listing this property on behalf of the landlord, the owner, and and don't worry, your tenancy is going to be protected. We'll give you lots of time to move out. There's nothing to worry about. I think that those conversations go so well, and they're just really so thankful that I showed up at their door. And then, like, guys, don't worry, you're going to spend the next 2 Christmases here. Not to worry, you're going to spend the next 2 birthdays here, next 2 Thanksgivings here. Don't worry about it, right? So, but I, there's just to put that on their radar that, hey, in a couple of years you might be given notice. But so my experience with tenants has been actually pretty good. Because the last thing I want is, like Alana said, if we got to get a geotech done and this tenant finds out, like, at 9 a.m. that there's a geotech coming at 3 p.m., he's not going to be happy with me. He's going to call the landlord, and he might not even know I'm involved because the landlord probably didn't tell him. So I'd rather go and talk to them and, do what I got to do and have a good relationship and keep lines of communication open. So that's kind of my thought on that experience.
That makes sense. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on dealing with tenants?
Yeah, I have no problem at all so far with the tenant. And even though they're happy to see a big signboard with land assembly than a sell signboard with just selling a home, because they think that they're going to stay for a longer time than selling as residential.
Oh, yeah, I never thought about it from that perspective. Another question that was brought up that was directed to you, Michelle. Do you tend to, when you're trying to assemble various homeowners, do you tend to try to meet with them in a group, or do you meet with them individually?
I think for the initial like kind of information section, I will want them to come to know more about what is going on and what is a land assembly meaning. And they will have a lot of, in general, idea and question from the beginning. Like, for example, what is the density in my area? How big of a site that the city required? And how many houses that I need to assemble all together? Or how long it's going to take, like a timeline that we're going through. And they may also want to ask, what's the neighborhood that they're going to do, and pricing wise, and then also the pre-sale price in this area. They have so many in general questions regarding a land assembly. What is that involved in there? Then I would say after that, then if they're interested, they usually will send us an email, and we'll ask for them, what's next, Michelle? So I already know, but I'm so excited to know what's next step.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go from there.
Go from there. So we're getting down to, it's 11:06 right now, according to my clock. One kind of not maybe necessarily final question, but do any of you have, and I'd like to kind of go for all 3 of you here, do any of you have a BAS deal or a situation that taught you a valuable lesson in your careers of dealing in land assemblies? Was there, can you tell us a story or something that happened that you go, I will never forget that, and I'm going to use that, or it's going to be beneficial for me in the future?
Yeah, I've got a good one. When I first started getting into land assemblies, I had 2 sites, and they were beautiful sites. And one in Vancouver, one in Burnaby, and they both collapsed in the same week. And so that was 14 deals that collapsed on me in the same week. So needless to say, I learned how to drink scotch, and I can't stand the stuff now to this date. But honestly, the pain and suffering of losing. And then the trouble is I put all my eggs in those baskets, right? Because I had 14 deals, and I had them done. Like, I had them sold and under contract. I had it, it was money in the bank, man, as far as I thought, being a new agent and all, this job was so much fun. And then when they both collapsed in the same week, holy cow. Don't put your eggs all in one basket. Keep your business running. Land assemblies are nice to do. Unless you're Michelle, you want to be selling other real estate too. So, that's just saying, be afraid or learn to drink scotch, one or the other. It's up to you. That's my story. Yeah. That's definitely my story. Yeah.
That's good. Michelle, what about you?
For me, I as a little bit did a little bit long, because a few years ago I have assembled a commercial site in Vancouver. There's about 6 lots in the block, and then right on completion day, the developer failed to complete. But that one of the small site, maybe because of the funding reason, and then they just only asked for 1 day extension. and I'm willing to pay penalty or whatever. And but the owner say no. So the deal collapsed. Of course, they ask for compensation and the developer has to pay for it. And that small lot is very important out of the 6 lot. So they need that small lots to, in order to have the well plan or whatever, their drawing and achieving the density. So that is very important. But then after this, the seller said that, no, sorry, because of due to capital gain reason, they cannot sell now. So then they have to wait for 4 years. And this year is the 4th year. And they send me an email, they're saying that, okay, I'm okay to see an offer right now, but my requirement is I need a cash offer, double of the value that he got 4 years ago. And I need you to make the decision within 1 week. Otherwise you need to wait another 4 years. So that
Wow.
is something to learn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's both of those sound kind of tough. Yeah. Joe, what about you? Any lessons you've learned over the years that have benefited you?
Well, I mean, I continue to learn lessons now, right? I mean, I don't think we'll ever stop learning lessons, but they also make you better. They make you sharper. You know, they allow you to see more perspectives and that sort of thing. But I mean, nothing stands out. I mean, other than, I mean, just this year, there's been so much going on with especially the Valley with, rapid bus proposals. TransLink's got this massive plan. So just keeping up with all of that, and managing expectations as far as landowners are concerned and dealing with this rising market where there's very, very little inventory, right? There's just been a lot of lessons learned as far as just kind of taking a step back, and just breathing a little bit and absorbing everything before you start rapid fire and giving people advice, because realtors they always want to be the expert of everything, right? We want to know everything if our client calls us, right? But I think for me this year, it's been nice to kind of meditate on some of the OCPs and NCPs and TransLink and just kind of really take a step back, ensure that I know what I know, and then go and give people advice versus being reactive to the advice instead of proactive.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know everything, but it's when something hits us in the face that we're like, oh yeah, we should probably do that a bit more, or really spend some time doing certain things. So yeah, I mean, just being committed. I mean, it's being, if somebody has a passion for selling commercial, industrial, doing land assembly, strata wind up, whatever it is, I mean, just being totally committed until the job is done, period. I think if you've got that mentality, obviously, I'm sure all the realtors, anybody in any sales business does, I think that will just take your diligence to a whole nother level. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think we're 10 after 11 right now. We do have a couple of other questions. If you guys want to answer a couple more questions, or are we good to wrap up? There is one question that it seems to be popping up a little bit off and on, and I'm going to kind of assemble this question. It's a group of them. So dealing with the contracts, the actual contracts when you're dealing, one of the questions here is, would you tell the group about the contracts and the process regarding assembling properties and owners? Now, that's a pretty loaded question, because what do you mean by contracts? Is there certain things that realtors need to be aware of when it comes to actually drawing up the contracts? I know there's all kinds of clauses and phrases and different things that you can use to protect both the sellers or your client that you're dealing with, but is there a way that do you have like a strategy that you have in place for contracts?
Yeah, I mean, I can start. Certainly no strategy, but definitely you want to. That's a great question, actually, by the way, because when you go deal with a landowner, if they're not sophisticated and but they want to be part of this assembly, it's probably best for you to enlighten them as to what terms and conditions they can expect in a contract of purchase and sale. And you should probably do that shortly after getting a listing, so that they don't get an offer in the first 2 weeks and they're like, well, I can't accept any of these terms and conditions. This is ludicrous. This is unbelievable. So what we do typically, depending who the client is we will, their sophistication level, of course, we will get them listed, and then within a week we'll send them a draft contract of purchase and sale with blanks, obviously, so that they know what terms and conditions that they can expect. And then we always encourage them to go and see their lawyer right away, because the thing is, the market's moving really fast, and if a developer makes an offer, he wants an answer relatively quick. We can't have an offer come in and the seller says, well, wait a minute, I haven't thought about all these ideas, I haven't thought about all these clauses, I need 2 weeks to think about this. So it's just, again, managing expectations, your return on time as a realtor, and then you maximizing your relationship, because you've put so much effort in getting these guys signed up. You don't want to fall short 3 feet from gold type of thing.
Right, makes sense. There's a comment here. After listening to all this informative discussion, I think I'm going to start referring my land assemblies. So it is pretty complex, definitely, and I've learned a lot. The research side of things is huge, and understanding your market and doing all of those things. So I think what we're going to do is we're probably going to try and wrap up. There was a question here to Alana that says, when will land assembly course be available for registration?
As soon as I get a minute to write it. You got it. I'm teasing up. I've been writing it ongoing for months, so I'm going to probably meet with real estate Richard Joy next in January. So figure about 3-4 months. 3 months.
Excellent.
Probably you guys will be able to take that course, and it'll be a 6-pointer, 6 hours. Yeah,
That's absolutely perfect. So I'd like to really thank all 3 of you for such an informative discussion. I think it was really great. We covered off a lot of information, a lot of tidbits of information that I'm sure that a lot of realtors will be very interested to maybe take nuggets of what you've provided and explode on it and try and make it their own. So thank you so much. Your expertise and knowledge in land assemblies really definitely shine through today. The other thing is, just so that the audience knows, we did do a recording of this session. So if you did miss out on anything and you want to go back and look for it, we will be, I think, sending that out. And also, before we go, we want to also hear your feedback from on this session as well. So when you log off, you'll get a pop-up link to the event survey. So please provide that feedback, because it's really invaluable to us at the board, so that we can know what you're thinking about and maybe things that you'd like to see more. I'm sure that there's going to be an opportunity in the future where we'll get Alana, Michelle, and Joe back in a room and have some more conversations about this and other really great topics. So thank you so much. This has been great. And it's been a fabulous session this morning. You guys made it real easy.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.